This is the Today with Tally podcast.
And welcome back to the Today with Tally podcast, folks. We have a great show in store for you today. Look, we had on a embed combat photographer that came on the show not too long ago by the name of Greg Janney. Now, he wrote this book about the magnificent bastards in Ramadi and a father's journey there. He was dug in with 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, also known as the Magnificent Bastards. And the Battle of Ramadi was just that. It was an intense battle, and a lot of good men were lost during this deployment. And this is a fascinating book that Greg wrote. And the more I got absorbed with the book, I reached out. He interviewed 46 Marines and Naval Corpsmen total in this book. And it's it's a straight up conversation. Everything was literally recorded. So what you see here is what you get and was exactly said in these interviews. And some of them are very intense, and some are funny, some are in humorous, and there's a lot in here too that tells the war stories, if you will, from these folks that were dug in Ramadi. Now, I also do want to express something that Greg Janney always wants to put forth. And he does this book. He wrote this book in full sincerity. And he wants everybody to remember, out of the 800 pages in this book, in the 46 interviews that he did, is the fog of war was very evident in so many of these Marines who literally fought side by side and had different perspectives of the same firefights that they were in, even though they were within feet of each other. So what one Marine says could be completely different from another Marine or Naval Corpsman said, because again, you're dug in the fog of war. And depending on how one man can look and see through his own eyes is going to be something completely different sometimes than what the neighboring Marine or Corpsman may see. And I want that to be known here too when you're reading this book, because it's very fascinating. And it's very good. I mean, he put this sucker together in a way that I've never seen a book put together. It's almost as if you're going through a documentary in this book. And I know I've read several chapters of it with several different men that were a part of this journey that Greg Janney went out on. And boy, I tell you, some Marines and Naval Corpsmen have more to say than others, and some didn't want to participate in it. It brings back too many bad memories. They're trying to heal those scabs and those wounds, and sometimes talking about it like this can rip those suckers right off. Now, we are going to be joined today by a devil doc that was dug in with 2-4 during the Battle of Ramadi by the name of Keith Grimes. And he has, put himself out there to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to come on and, we can, rap a little bit back and forth, tell a couple stories. But look, he's here to help promote this book too, because the memories, of the Marines that were lost out there shall never be forgotten. And this will be a timeless keepsake for generations on down, that future generations can read, about their great grandpas, you know, and their bloodlines in the, you know, in this 20-year war that our country went through. But I want to read a quick prologue here before I bring in Keith. Now it says, what were you doing on 6 April 2004? While most of us went about our daily lives, the men of the 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, also known as the Magnificent Bastards, were fighting and dying in Ramadi, Iraq, and 12 families' lives were forever changed. On a day that few of us remember, 11 Marines and a Navy corpsman were killed in fighting across the city, 8,000 miles from home, including a daylight ambush in a narrow marketplace on the east side of Ramadi. This book is about the Battle of Ramadi and of 2 long journeys that Greg Janney, the author, has made back to Iraq with Gold Star father John Wroblewski in an attempt to visit the site where his son, U.S. Marine 2nd Lieutenant J.T. Ski Wroblewski fell in the battle that terrible day in 2004. Now, the mission and the goal was to honor the sacrifices of these men and their families by performing a memorial service at the location where they lost their lives in service to our nation and their brothers in arms. The Magnificent Bastards of 2-4 1st Marine Division lost 34 men in combat during their 2004 deployment in Ramadi. And with that, we're honored to be joined by retired Navy Chief Keith Grimes. How are you, sir?
Doing very well, Brian. How are you today, man?
Good, man. Sorry for that long intro there. I'm trying to give this book a little bit of justice here. I mean, this is a remarkable read. And I think I've read about 6 Marines so far. And of course, you being a Devil Doc, that brings the total to 7. You know, some are very, you know, long and in depth, and some Marines, you know, they don't really want to talk about it. But yeah. Greg Janney was dug in with you guys. 46 came forward and said, I want to be in the book. And you were one of those men that raised your hand and said, yeah, I want to tell some stories because they deserve to be told.
Absolutely. Yeah, Greg worked really hard to acquire all of that information. It's hard to put a book together like this. You know it. In this type of a realm, people don't want to talk. They want to keep that Pandora's box closed. Sometimes it's harder to reclose it. So Greg worked hard. I almost didn't jump in and do the interview because I don't want to do interviews. I don't want to be on TV. I don't want to be in books. It's just you're doing a thing. You're doing a job. You move on. But this is obviously significant because it changed some of the warfare tactics for the entire Marine Corps. On the actions that we took on this battle. So I had great leadership. Otherwise, we probably would have all been wiped out. I can't tell you how many times we were pinned down, almost overrun. Some interesting days, shall we say.
So explain some of the changes that took place within the Marine Corps due to the Battle of Ramadi.
Well, as I understand it, and I transitioned to Marine Corps units, to Navy units, I'm Army units. I bopped around a lot in my career. So some of the tactics, the urban warfare. Before we went in, you're expecting to lose about 50% in casualties, whether wounded or killed. You're walking into a city understanding this is a fact of life. So who is going to be that 50% and how much of it will be injured versus dead? And as they were breaking down the actions and the tactics that were employed, especially during April 6th, 7th, and moving on, they actually changed some of the tactics for urban warfare based upon the decisions and methodologies that were practiced on the deck plate there in Ramadi itself. Understanding Ramadi and Fallujah were kicking off at the same time, we were pushing people back and forth. So we were only about 16 kilometers apart. So they start kind of pushing, they come our direction. We start pushing, goes their direction. They just had all the firepower. We were a little bit lonely in Ramadi. Not much air cover. We weren't really allowed to use artillery. So I don't know what all changed. I wish I could speak to that. I never actually went back and looked. But speaking to some of the very, very senior Sergeant Major Booker, talking to, well, now Lieutenant Colonel Bronzy, or Colonel Bronzy, I'm sorry now. Things kind of got shifted, and we had to kind of improvise on the fly. We didn't have gear. We're using improvised tourniquets, most of us. I mean, that's how depleted in equipment we were walking into the city, let alone holding it down.
So when you went into Ramadi, you guys were there for several days, correct?
Correct. So I was Advon. So we were convoyed in, we flew into Kuwait, loaded everything up, sat in the back of the truck for multiple days. And then once we arrived in Ramadi, we were trying to take over from the Army units that were there. I know the 82nd was there. I don't remember who all was there. Multiple little bases. And then we got this little tiny combat outpost, which was, I can't say it was quiet, but it was a lot quieter in the very beginning because everything was nice. Army had their thing. But things change, as they always do.
So you were going in there to basically relieve the Army of their duties, and now the Marines were taking Ramadi in that combat outpost.
Correct. The Army had different assets at various bases around the city. Where we were going was I don't even know how big it was, a couple hundred, maybe 100 meters by about 80 meters wide. And I could be way off on that, so forgive me. But a small Army contingent was there, and they didn't really patrol through the city. They were not foot patrolling. They were more mobile, drive through, drive by if needed, kind of like the first when we first got into Iraq, and was it early 03, world's biggest drive-by. So what we found and what we expected and what we planned for, everything changed once we got there. The Iraqis, I found out later, considered us kind of cake eaters. I do not remember the term that they were using, but they felt that we were soft. We were just hanging out. We were there to rebuild, which is exactly what we were there to do. But the quiet and the nice and the cordial was just them trying to figure out how they're going to get back at us as well. And they tried.
Yeah, it doesn't look like that they had any equipment that they were leaving you guys behind.
No, not much.
There's a lot of stuff in here I don't even want to say right now because I don't want the podcast to get taken down because of some unusual words in sentences, but it's very real. It is combat. But Greg Janney, the combat embed photographer that was dug in with you, was also dug in with Third ID. And he said that there was a world of difference between the Army and the Marine Corps. And he says there is no comparison. And I know that came up because of, a lot of your testimony prior to him stating that. When you arrived there, I mean, it was pretty bland, to say the very least, right?
Yeah, it was. It was kind of quiet. It started ramping up a little bit. First, probably the first month, it was, hey, this might not be half bad in the sense of we're rebuilding, we're helping, we're doing schools, we're doing infrastructure, and we're doing all that good stuff. We're meeting with leaders. We thought, okay, this is our opportunity to really help and to really rebuild this city and keep it calm and whatnot. And we later found out all of or many of the city leaders were corrupt and working with each other and feeding intel and all that. But it was quiet initially. The Army didn't go into the city, and maybe it was an unspoken agreement of we don't foot patrol through the city. You just stay within the city. And they had this agreement, which the Marines, it's not how we do things. That's not how we operate. We go through, we secure, we make sure it's happening. You shoot at me, I come for you. It's how we operate. Well, I'm Navy, but spent too much time with Marine Corps. It escalated pretty quick. As soon as April kicked off, it was a couple IEDs here, maybe a couple shots there, but it was gravy. All right, for a combat run, all right, this ain't half bad. And then our minds was changed, of course. But having Greg in there, like the equipment, the ability, the assets, the resources that Third ID had, that they had on Junction City, which was on the other side from where we were, it was unreal. I mean, they're eating these just beautiful, well-fed chow halls with their gear and motor pools, and it's a standard. You would think that you're in any other country. Real quiet inside their base, and they had everything they needed. We were scrapping. We were acquiring armor and strapping it on with actually acquired armor from a broken down 7-ton, and I strapped it to my my ambulance on each side just to give us something besides fiberglass as we're transporting people. And that, I can tell you, that armor took a beating, even though my let's just say the Navy leadership was quite unhappy about the potential Geneva Convention of possibly covering up the Red Cross on the side of the vehicle. What he didn't realize is sometimes that was the only vehicle that was getting shot at when we're popping through the city at 4 or 5 different vehicle convoys. They're picking me off. It's not good. Let's fix this problem. So, yeah, started out nice and chill. Everybody's getting the hang of it. But as soon as we started going into that city, they didn't like it. They started getting quite unhappy about it. I get it in their shoes, but no, they were trying to do some nefarious stuff, shall we say. A lot of it got stopped as we were there. Women getting beaten and left in the streets. There were all kinds of things going on. And so, yeah. Sorry, just running off on a tangent there.
The calm before the storm was very real for you.
It was. And it was breeding complacency if you're not careful.
Say again?
It was breeding complacency. When you're walking around and you're doing your thing, like, oh, we don't need armor for this or that those ideas will stop popping in your head. And then you're getting comfortable. Then you're not watching. Then you're not scanning. That's when you die. Or somebody next to you dies. So I don't know what their plans were. I know that there's been different intel. We captured a ton of intel. But I don't know. We were all signing each other up, and we thought this might be kind of a gravy run. We weren't sure. Just random city. What are we doing here? And when it ramps up hard. And then they already know your tactics. They understand. They have people planted inside our bases. We're trying to reconstruct it. And, you know, the water guys are getting killed left and right because they don't, you know, the water guys were getting killed because they were bringing us water. So the Iraqis, the insurgents would kill them, and then we would keep going through water guys. And then sometimes we get water from the Euphrates. So it's, yeah, they had a ton of intel when they started coming at us.
These days don't ever start off, you know, with like, oh man, you know, we woke up and, you know, we were under fire. We were taking mortars and IEDs and all that stuff. Usually from all the war stories and a lot of the combat veterans I've had on this podcast, it always starts like, well, you know, it was just a regular day and everything was good. And, you know, and we were getting ready to go do our routine, you know, patrols. And then all of a sudden hell broke loose.
Yeah.
And that's how it typically will start and will begin. Now, when you guys entered into the Battle of Ramadi, were you guys at all prepared on what was going to be coming downrange at you?
No, not really. We had our plans, we had our systems and things that we were going to be doing. And we were pretty concentrated on rebuilding not only our base, but getting liaison with people, and everything was gravy. And then we had no idea. We really had no idea how hard and how fast they were going to come at us. And thank God our leadership, and I was a young little corpsman back then, and they said, hey, by the way, you're going to 2-4. Oh, by the way, you're deploying, you know, you're going to be leaving with them in 2 months. Oh, by the way, you've never been with the Marine unit. Now you're in charge of you're the senior line guy in charge of all these corpsmen and all their medical, and then hit the deck. So I had my systems, I had my techniques and plans and ideas of what I needed, how to manage it. All the Marines were doing the same thing, you know, just in case. And then you realize how wrong you are when the proverbial fecal matter smacks onto that spinning fan. You realize what you failed at, what you didn't understand, what you didn't know. You know what? At one point, as you're pushing through, as you're dealing with all the chaos, which is chaos, fog of war, you mentioned it, it's absolutely nuts. You don't know what's happening, where, why, and you're constantly trying to compensate and move and push and fight and all the above. You realize where your thoughts, your plans, your ideas, what you believed would happen or what all goes out the window. So that's when you really, that's when, at that point of friction, that's when you learn the most. And I'm glad, God, I got to bring it back to the book. Greg did such a great job. I kept a small diary, a little journal, shall we say, while I was in country. Day one to, I think I stopped at about, I don't even know, like day 50 or something. Because I couldn't put enough down. I didn't want to sit here and write it all down. And all I'm talking about is I'm working on this guy, or this guy died, or I did it, I had to, drag this over and try to see what I can do. You know what? It became pointless to continue to journal this. And that's where I'm glad Greg really picked up the slack on that one, where I failed to keep my consistency with journaling each day, operations, what happened, because I wanted to read back on it. Greg kind of picked up that mantle, and he didn't fluff it up. I've read a couple books, even about Ramadi, and sometimes they're not quite really how it went down. And the fact that Greg stuck to his guns, and this is whatever they said, this is what we're doing. That I found extremely unique.
Mm-hmm. And that's why this book is real.
Yeah.
And it is raw.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think you really needed to do the journaling, because you guys are all hardened combat veterans that went through literal hell in the Battle of Ramadi. And I know especially you. I mean, you were the Devil Doc. You were the Naval Corpsman. You saw all of the bad. And you've even had a lot of Marines, expire, directly in front of you when you're doing everything you can to save their lives from combat-related deaths. All while you're trying to keep your own head on a swivel, and and treat these Marines with minimal gear, assets, and you guys were kind of in there on your own, right? I mean, you didn't have a lot of air support, and you were getting mowed down. I mean, 34 Marines lost their lives over was this a 2-day period or a 3-day period?
Well, we had 34 throughout the duration of the deployment.
Okay.
The day, let's see, April 6th, I know Echo lost 12. I believe we lost 14 day one. That day was chaotic for me. So just to kind of give you a perspective, April 6th, we weren't patrolling. Normally I'm out somewhere with somebody. In this case, I was just hanging around doing, shall we call it maintenance, and trying to get onto the QRF. Everything blew apart. QRF punches out. I still can't seem to get on the QRF, which I'm glad I was unable to, because they took off before I can grab my med bag, and I couldn't go with them. Because as we're going through and all these casualties are coming in from the Army, from the Marines, it was just chaos. It was essentially a mass casualty. All these guys came in, and we're dealing with not only how injured are you, how alive are you, what can we do, what can we save, how can we move them, how do we keep the casualties away from the view of the Marines. You cannot destroy their morale by seeing their buddy bleed out on the floor, type of a thing. So the Marines that didn't initially make it when we got back, or as we were getting them in, we had to kind of put them off into a room and create a field expedient freezer for the most part. We took our lounge, cranked up the AC, ripped everything out, and that became our morgue for the most part. And this is all on the fly, mind you. So, and this is where we were watching TV. I remember seeing the TV was left on. Somebody left it on. It was on CNN. And as I'm moving and managing casualties, trying to kind of be real careful here, on the TV is CNN, of course. And they mentioned kind of the Battle of Ramadi going down and whatnot. And it was completely different from what was really going down. It was so far off, I'm not even sure they knew what city they were talking about. That's how very off it was. And I remember this as I'm moving body bags in and whatnot. And I had 2 Marines. I need some help. There's only the medical team we were working with. We need some help. I have to hold down the Marines as we're working on them. If they're really hurt, people freak out. This is human nature. So I had to get two of my hardest. I mean, they are poster boy hardcore Marines, and I had them in there helping me hold down legs and patching things up, and we're doing tourniquets and all kinds of things. And after we were done, after day one, after we got done managing what we had, and I was finally able to let them, hey, go ahead and do what you need to do. I'm okay now. They both stood there and said, Doc, don't ever ask me to do that again. Don't ever, ever ask me to, I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't do this. Both of them. And they were just white as ghosts, and they just punched off. Now, these are poster board, like, I think they were a pair of sergeants at the time. And it was too much. And that's when the key thing to do is you play the cards, you use the information that you have, you trust in your judgment at the time, you let the cards fall where they may. You don't play what if. Well, what if I did this? What if I did that? What if will kill you? It is going to kill you. It is not an if, or it's a when. And I had to have that conversation with those Marines because, these are my buddies, and they were really broken up, seeing everything that could happen. They were very aware of their own mortality at that point. Before that, we can do anything. You don't think about it. So never play what if, ever. And a lot of lessons learned when things kicked off. We learned exactly how not to do things. And if you don't learn from that alone will kill you too. It's a lot to manage. I mean, I'm trying to identify bodies. I'm checking pulses. There was a vehicle that came in with a bunch of Marines that had their gear stripped off or whatnot. And I had to go through, identify, check pulse, see if anybody's alive, see what gear we had, because these guys were just put into a vehicle, so we had to get them out of there. And that's when we started making the expedient morgue, because I needed somewhere to put these guys to identify them. And there's one of my other corpsmen. It was even more so, let's go out and do what we do. And the Marines got angry. Now we're angry. We're trying to help you. And this is what you do. Now we're fucking angry. You shoot at us, we're going to. That was the decision. Sorry.
Yeah.
It happens because you kind of start realizing and remembering how it goes down and all the different elements in play. So I apologize if I get too off tangent.
No.
Stop me.
100%. This is your podcast. Again, you saw things that 99.9% of Americans will never see in 10 lifetimes. And you saw all this in very short fashion, and would go on to serve an honorable 20 years in the Navy. I mean, a tremendous career to this country, and everything that you have given: service, sacrifice, dedication, saving the lives of Marines. You sir, can say whatever you want on this podcast. And you've earned, and you've earned that right. And deservingly so. Now, you said mortality. That's something that we never think of. Marines never think of mortality. It's always one shot, one kill on our end, and they don't ever think that that's going to happen to me until you got a pair of sergeants in there saying, "Hey, man, I need your help. I need you to hold down these legs. I need you to I need you to hold a hand here. I need you to treat for shock. I'm down here. I'm working on a leg. I'm working on an arm. I'm working on, internal organs, head wounds, you name it. And you're just trying to stay calm, cool, collective, just like any, EMT paramedic would be on a gunshot wound in a big city, or a stab wound in a big city, because that's exactly what you were encountering, a really big gang fight, if you will. And that's a lot of things coming at you, but with very little resources. I mean, it's not like you had 5 corpsmen there, right? I mean, weren't you basically on your own with
majority? Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Now go ahead.
For a majority of the time I was, we were by ourselves. You make do with what you have. You train your Marines up to, all right, you're now combat aidsmen. You do what I tell you. And if I go down, well, you're my insurance policy, because the corpsman is the insurance policy of the Marine unit per se. Force multiplier, we can go down the road all we want. But it's my job was to make sure that they got back home, and preferably alive in one piece or whatnot, but home. You're not going to die here. I'm not going to leave you out here. I will die making sure that you get home. And it's one thing that we all realized is that after April 6 and 7, after we were really running and gunning, we realized that, well, we're not going to make it till tomorrow. Tomorrow doesn't matter. Not one of us. And I talked to a lot of the Marines because I had to make sure that they're mentally that they were okay, or at least stable and ready to do the job. So I'm going through talking to all the Marines I had, every unit I can find, and making sure they understand, hey, look, you plan, you train, you work, but if it's your time, it's your time. So do your job the best you can to protect the guy next to you. And we all kind of had that conversation of tomorrow doesn't matter. What's the day? Who cares? Fair enough. Because we knew we weren't going home until you do. So you push and you fight and you work as hard as you can, but you let the cards fall where they may. They can't save them all. I remember putting Ski on the bird. We escorted him up. I did his brief to the air medic that was on board. I think it was a Navy flight. So there was a corpsman on board, and or a Marine Corps flight. And I had the brief. I snatched him up by his headgear, and I'm yelling at him to watch the crike on Ski, because he was good, got a thumbs up, checked on him. LT's good to go. I'm punching out. But there is so much damage. And the one thing that I do think back on was for Roblowski is that I got that thumbs up, made eye contact. You're good. You can breathe. You're set. Talk to the Medevac corpsman right there. Got him spun up. They punched off, and then I get word that Ski didn't make it. So that one, when you do what you can and you cannot succeed, it's okay. You did what you can. You can walk away from that knowing that you did what should have been done to the best of your ability. Ski pisses me off because we could not be on the aircraft. We had to turn him over because we fucking had him stable. But you never know. People can go from stable to unstable really quick. You do what you can. And that's something that a lot of us had to really swallow, is not playing what if. And I had to make sure they weren't playing what if, because I knew that would kill them. I had a lot of practice in ERs and trauma centers. And, I was mad as hell when I left Presidential Guard, or Presidential Ceremonial Guard. I went to corpsman school, become a corpsman still. And I tried my hardest to get a Marine Corps unit. They said, nope, billets are full. You're going to go and be a hospital bitch. Well, I was lucky and ended up in an ER, learned my trade, and then bounced around LA and San Diego working trauma centers, knowing I wanted to go to a Marine Corps unit. End up with the Marines finally, and no shit, it all comes in handy. So getting them to that level as quickly as possible was a fuck ton of work, because they had the mentality, they just didn't have the education. Nobody trained them up on medical before they really started gearing up. So a lot of complications, a lot of mistakes, a lot of lessons learned. That's for damn sure. I tell you.
Well, I mean, that's exactly what I was referring to a little while ago about the whole gun and knife club.
Yeah.
Like a big gang fight out there. You got a mass casualty event, and you're running solo out there, devil doc, trying to keep everybody alive and and on point and keep everything around you as collected as possible. So for you to basically get all your training from San Diego to LA, again, running the gun and knife club and ERs, I think that may have set you up pretty well for what you were ready to see and what you were getting ready to go through in this very critical time, not only in the need of those Marines, but in a very critical and pivotal time in your life. Now, how old were you when you were going through all this combat?
At the time, I believe I was 26.
So you're 26 years old, and,
I was a little bit old.
And you're literally stacking bodies.
Literally, yeah. I had to learn how to be a Marine, and I had to teach them how to be a corpsman. So we made the agreement. You train the shit out of me, and I'm going to train the shit out of you. And if we're not holding up, we call each other out. So that's what we did with the unit. I swore to them I would out-Marine them. And I tried, but they were good Marines. So, yeah. Yeah.
No, you're good, man. When they Medevac ski out, how long did it take for the chopper to get down to where you were to get him out of there?
That took a minute. When we had the main mass casualty, it's one thing I needed to go back on. We were actually at the combat outpost, and so I think we had 2 physicians and about 4 or 5 other corpsmen. We're all managing these 12, 15, 20 people coming in at a time. At least for that one, I was not by myself. We had a semblance of a facility to work out of. So that's one thing I didn't want to misrepresent on that aspect of it. For the Medevac for ski, I honestly do not remember how long it took from call to landing, but I know it was a hot zone. We were trying to cool it off, and normally the Army will not land on a hot LZ. So usually, because I started carrying a radio. I got tired of looking for my radio guy, or we're running around. So I had a radio on each side just so that I can either talk to air or talk to battalion, because I got tired of trying to deal with that. Well, waiting for this bird to come down and make it cool enough. Army's saying no. So we're like, hey, it's a cold LZ. Army's like, we're not landing for the most part. And then the Marines basically fuck it. And they come down, they slam that bird down, and we start loading. And I don't know how long it took. It took us a minute to get ski stable. That was a really nasty wound trying to keep his airway open. And so we ended up putting a crike on that one, opening up secondary airway because of the damage on his face. But it took a minute, and then we had probably a couple hours maybe by the time we got him out of there and he was landing over in launch stool. I mean, there's a huge gap of time. It's blank. I'm so busy working on people and working with the other corpsmen and docs. I couldn't tell you how long it took to get that bird down, but I know there was a lot of delays trying to cool it down so the bird doesn't get shot down. Because we also had, I believe the same day, was it a Cobra? I don't know if it was that same day, but we had a Cobra crew go down. We had to go snatch them up. I think it's a different day, though. It's chaos. Sorry. A lot of chaos. I mean, we had Marines coming back in. We had an Army track come in. The gunner up on top had his hand off. So he's holding it like this and shooting his weapon as it comes screaming and drifting into the outpost. I mean, there's a lot of chaos. So the time frames, it's blips. It's just pictures. And every second is, every picture is probably 10 minutes, but it seems like a half a second to you. So, you know how the time elongates and comes back together again.
Yeah, sure. Was this the most difficult time in your 20-year career?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of a few. Man, when it comes to seeing your friends coming back and having to put them in body bags and check their gear and pull their tags and all that, yeah, it was tough. It wasn't as impersonal as maybe working up in a trauma center in LA. Oh, look, another gunshot. When people come in injured, they're just anatomical objects to be fixed. Male, female, doesn't really matter. I mean, that's how you look at them. So when it's somebody like when the night before, I just borrowed a CD from him, a DVD, because I was bored. And we're talking shit back and forth and heckling each other. And then there I am working on him the next day, trying to keep him alive. And it was like, well, and I think I still have that CD somewhere because it got lost up in all my tack gear. I just never went it back into my tack gear after that one. There's no reason to. Most of my gear, I had to scrub the blood off of like daily. So keeping some of it was unfeasible, shall we say. And so I still got my boots though. My boots are pink, like my coyote boots with the shoestrings. Yeah, they're on here. The boots themselves are permanently pinkish from all the work. So I don't know if that answered your question. If not, let me know. I'm happy to return.
Oh man, I'm just trying to picture all of these events going down in my head, and I can only understand, the grief that not only you experienced, but all of 2-4, when you guys were in this battle. And that's probably why, this is, so difficult to talk about, is because the amount of Marines that were lost. Now, I know you guys got pissed off and went, forward march and took care of business. Now, you being and like I said, and we could sit here for days on end, and I can hear war stories from you, because you have a lot of them in this book, as well as the other 43 Marines that were interviewed for this 800-page book that Greg magnificently put together for the Magnificent Bastards of 2-4.
Yeah.
Now, you being in the medical field, I know that post-traumatic stress is probably very near, dear, and real to you and so many of the Marines that you served with. Now, being a 26-year-old kid out there and working on all of these Marines and having, to deal with, KIAs, and knowing that these Marines all have families and loved ones 8,000 miles away from them, while you're trying to stack bodies in a makeshift morgue, has got to do a lot on a man's psyche. How have you recovered, if you will, or have you recovered mentally and emotionally from everything that you've endured during your career, but additionally from this incident in Ramadi?
It's been a long road, actually. And I'm glad you brought this up. I mean, it tailors into the 22 a day and all the different awareness campaigns that are going on. You have to understand that some people, and here's something I had to, this was a hard, very hard lesson for me. There's two lessons I've learned. One of them is not everybody's wired to do a job. Now, that's a very vague thing, but some people are wired because they love cleaning and they want to be a janitor, and that's what gives their life purpose or whatnot, or being a cop, being whatever, enter job here. That's what they're wired for. That's what they can handle. I mean, I have a neighbor of mine, their boy, he's 32 and he absolutely loves being a janitor, makes enough money, happy, doesn't want to interact. That's how he's wired. We had a young man who was in Ramadi with us that he was a corpsman and he got jammed into a job he wasn't wired for. I kind of suspected, and I kept trying to get him transferred off my team because he was part of golf company. And a lot of us were really kind of worried, but the guy, the senior medical guy said, no, like, don't prejudge. Let the, we train him up, we practice, we'll be fine, we'll do it. And then he failed under fire completely. When everything erupted, when the bullets started hitting the tarmac there, he failed, crumbled down. Oh my God, they're trying to kill me, crawled up in a ball while his Marines are trying to stay alive. And this all happened on April 6th as well. I was angry. I was angry as hell. And it leads into your questions, so bear with me here. I told the senior medical leadership he needs to be transferred off the team immediately, put into a rear echelon position. He failed under fire. I can't have that. He's a liability now. My leadership said, absolutely not. Nope, he's staying there. Okay. Tried again. They said, absolutely not. Nope, that is the corpsman that is attached to that platoon. We're not even going to think about it. I'm like, all right. And this is my chief at the time. I retired as a chief, mind you. So to my chief, and we went back and forth. We went back and forth. And for all intents and purposes, I told the chain of command, either you transfer him or he will be sent home in the next 48 hours. Choose. What do you mean? If you don't transfer him, we will shoot him ourselves. You're now a liability. I will shoot my own corpsman to send him home because he will get my people killed. I can't have that. So would I have really shot him back then? I don't know. I honestly couldn't tell you because he was impeding the progress and he was a danger to my people and to myself. Can't have that. I had to come around to the terms. All right, I can't be, I can't one of my own corpsmen. That's just not, you can't do that. It's not right. I'll just pop him in the leg, maybe bang it, stick him in the leg, whatever I had to do to make sure he goes home. Chief finally relented after a couple of my Marines came together and said the same exact thing. You send him out in patrol, he's going home on a flight because that's how dangerous he was. He just couldn't do anything. And he was not mentally there. Now, this made me angry as hell. I hated this kid for shit. Probably a decade or two. Hated him. If I saw him, I'd probably want to stab him. And I finally grew up a little bit. And a little bit of wisdom kicked in after about a decade. And I realized he was put into a position that he was not wired for. May not be entirely his fault. Some people are not wired to do what we do. Now, I'm a very compartmentalized kind of guy. If like my friends are on the table, I don't care. I don't know them. I'm working on them. I will do the best I can to get to save your life or to correct a problem. After is when you open up that box and you deal with it. You don't deal with it on the spot. There is no room for emotion when it comes to trauma or combat. No, none whatsoever. It is what it is. So I hated this kid, and I finally started to understand that not everybody's wired that way. I'm wired that way. I did not know. I wasn't sure. But once the shit started hitting the fan and it became chaotic, I realized that I'm kind of comfortable. Not in the sense of I wasn't afraid of dying. It was, this makes sense to me. This I can handle. I'm working on him. I'm shooting that direction. I'm yelling at that guy. And I'm watching my rear for somebody to come up behind me. But this is what we do because my Marines trained me very, very well. And I listened. So not everybody's wired to do every job. And you have to realize that about your people. It's a human understanding problem that I was lacking. Not everybody's wired to do it, but there's other jobs he could do. Get him off the front line. The other one we mentioned is don't play what if, because I'm just as batshit as everybody else. I have seen so many people, kids die and whatnot while I was over there. I have a 13-year-old daughter right now. He had it coming. I'm not going to back up. I'm not going to say what if. I'm not going to regret it. I made the decision. That's it. Move forward. And then you live with that. You have to have faith in yourself that the decisions that you made, right or wrong, were the right thing to do with the information you had. And if you start playing what if, which ties into PTSD and dealing with this little energy, this little demon that's inside you, it's a little fire. I had a Vietnam vet pull me aside and said, look, we were camping. Of course, I'm home for like 2-3 weeks. And my family and friends are like, hey, let's go camping in the desert. Like I just have not spent the last 7 or 8 months in the desert. Fuck it. All right, I'll go camping. You know what? Maybe it's good for me because I was spun. All the things that you go through, you start kind of unraveling. And this Vietnam vet, he was a Marine grunt in Vietnam. And I never met the guy. We're sitting in the fire. He looks over at me and goes, you're fucked up. We need to talk. Let's go for a walk. And I spent a couple hours with that guy, and he started to explain really what he did, what worked for him. He's like, look, you're fucked up, and you're kind of in a dangerous fucked up position right now. You need to tone this down. And he laid it out to me. And you're going to live with this for the rest of your life. Once you got that on-off switch, shall it be anger, shall it be rage, whatever. Everybody's got that point, and it takes a lot to hit that switch. That switch is gone. I'm just on all the fucking time. So now I have what I had to conclude is a roommate. I have this roommate. I have this little fucking demon, this little evil bastard that wants to run amok. You got to feed him. You got to take care of him. And then he's happy. If you start ignoring him, he gets really fucking unhappy. And that can lead to bad things. So you feed it. You keep it happy and you pet it. And by saying that, I mean, you think about it. Sometimes you talk about it. You talk about it with people that you know, the people who understand. I'm not going to have this conversation with somebody who has never even been with a combat unit, let alone, seen fire. There's no point. You're not wired to understand it because your wiring has not been changed to fully understand the impact of it and how far you can now go, how your brain now works. So you talk about it, you discuss it with friends, you reach out, well, hey, I'm not doing so well. Have I almost eaten a Yeah, I thought about it. When I was having some problems with my marriage and things were getting kind of rough and I wasn't sure what to do. And it was a rough time. And I'm like, you know what? And I revisited it. Realized, no, it's not an option for me. Like, I have a $500,000 life insurance policy on myself. So my family would probably be fine. And it's not so much to make it work to where they're taken care of. But then I'm not there. And then the impact of that, you're not there. You're not there. I wouldn't be there to watch my daughter live. I wouldn't be there to impart what I've learned and the trials and tribulations and that fucking darkness. Why would I just go to the grave with that? That's something that you should be passing along and making sure that somebody who is in that job, nobody's wired for it, but sometimes you're wired for it to handle it a little better. So that's how you manage it. You talk, you acknowledge it, it's part of you. You don't ignore it. So you talk to your friends, you relive it. You go through and you read a book. I went back and I read my diary. I hate to call it diary. It makes me sound like a 13-year-old girl, but it was a journal of day-to-day thing. And as I was going through and reading that journal, traveling. Here's the next 5 guys I had to put in a body. Here are all the mistakes that I realized I made and I should have done, or, I trusted my equipment. I almost had one of my good buddies die because I put a chest seal on him. He took a couple gunshots and he dropped like a sack in the middle of a kill zone. I should have decompressed him, but I thought he was stable enough for me not to have to pull off his gear and decompress. Well, he almost died because I made a mistake. I made a judgment call that I learned from. Well, that's what PTSD is about too. You learn how to live with this little fucking demon, and you have to keep him in check, and you have to have an outlet. You work out, you game. I play some Call of Duty. I have a great time. I crank up the music, and I have to run around on the video game. And you know what? I find that it's a little bit of an outlet. And then I go lift. I go work out. I go shovel snow. It's Wyoming. We have enough. And that's my outlet. And I talk. So now I'm off-gassing this little box that can explode. And you off-gas it. You burp it just a little. And you work out. You're burping it. You eat a little bit better. You drink a little less. You're burping the lid. That's how you manage it. That's how I managed it. Everybody's different.
I have asked that question probably well over 200 times on this podcast about the unpacking and dealing with post-traumatic stress after going through some very, very dark and egregious combat. And I've never heard it explain the way that you just explained it, and it makes the most sense to me that I've ever heard in my entire life. Look, very few can handle what you do and what you did, and it makes all the sense in the world to me on why you were doing everything that you could do to get that weak link, right, out of there. And you're only as strong as your weakest link. And you had a junior corpsman that was there that was not cut from the same cloth as you were. And now he was no longer an asset, if he ever was an asset, but now he's a liability that's going to cause lives to be lost that should have never happened. And so the question is can the Navy do a better job? Can the Marine Corps do a better job on preparing our future generations for scenarios just like this? Because let's face it, a lot of people can't look. Training is one thing.
Yeah.
Having 10 boxes in front of you that are blown out is a completely different thing. Are a lot of naval corpsmen cut out for that job? And look, he folded under fire. He folded. He cut. He ran. He curled up. He couldn't take it. Are there others out there that have done this same thing that you know of that should have in some part of training or maybe, in the field, they showed some signs that they couldn't maybe do the job? Because when you're under that type of pressure, that's not when you should really know and understand the blood and the guts that you're getting ready to see. So I do believe that your career was set off in something that was going to prepare you for what you were getting ready to see. So again, I think that every naval corpsman straight out of school needs to go right to the ERs in these big cities to learn how to see the knife, wounds and the gunshot, victims, and what it looks like for somebody to overdose, to see if you can deal with that type of scenario, and to see if you can mentally prepare yourself for what you are going through. So when you do get shipped overseas in a hot zone, you got rounds flying over your head. You've got, bodies coming in that you need to take care of and hopefully not expire on you. That right there is, everything. It is being prepared, having a military that's absolutely 100% prepared. Let me tell you about Patriot Homes right here in the greater Houston metropolitan area, folks. These guys are out doing the hard work. It's kind of hard to please people in today's world, but let me tell you, Cody Dawson and his family business stand behind everything they do.
Custom kitchens, bathrooms, master bathrooms, whole home renovations, outdoor patios, home additions, outdoor kitchens.
They are your one-stop shop for everything that you want to do in your home. It's always nice to know that you got somebody that can come in and give you a great price. And not only give you a great price, but be on time, on budget, reliable. All you got to do is just go to patriothomestx.com. That's patriothomestx.com. They're building your vision with pride and precision.
You'll sometimes go through it's called Field Medical Service School. And it's teaching the Navy how to be Marines, how to live in the field, how to deal with your gear. It's all that fun stuff. And you're going through medicine and trauma and whatnot. But the main thing that set me up, I believe, for a good chunk of my career is exactly what you said. I spent the time in the ERs and I wanted to know my craft. I knew at some point I'm going to be with the Marine unit, which means I'm not going to have anything I need to be able to do what I do. So if I know how to manage things, I can come up with ways to modify them, to improvise. If you know the core, you can improvise from there. So yes, absolutely. I don't believe any corpsman should go to any Marine Corps unit unless they've already been through LA trauma, and the Navy should be bumping up their training. If you're going to be with a Marine Corps combat unit of any type, and I went through SEER and I've been through all those schools, and I think they should have to do tours at LA trauma. We need to up our game when it comes to why isn't the Navy medicine running trauma centers? We don't have them because it's expensive. Guess where we got all of our training? Navy trauma centers, way back when. Now you get stuck in a clinic, or you get stuck in some random place, and they're not learning the trauma. They're not learning all the crazy trauma. Trauma is just medicine at high speed. So you have regular medicine and you have hours. You have trauma and you have minutes. But the concepts, the foundation, and the application are very, very similar. So if you know your skills, when new stimuli is added, like gunfire or explosions or flashbangs or whatnot, you already know this part. So this becomes muscle memory. So your brain can, all right, how do I manage this? The next training scenario, you already know how to manage all of that. Now we add a different stimuli. If you're going to be doing a stressful job, the training should be stressful. Just like field med should involve going through trauma center. I should be getting yelled at. I should be getting, drive them. You get no sleep. You're not fed. Throw trauma into SEER school. I was starving and tired and beat the shit. Guess what? Then I have to go work on people. That was Iraq. So you have to train like you fight. And people are forgetting that and they're becoming complacent. Training has to be harsh. It has to be mean. It has to be tough enough, but safe enough. And I'm a big believer in enough. You have to be aggressive enough or mellow enough, or passive, shall we say. You have to be emotional enough or you have to be unemotional enough. Everything is enough. So managing all these different things becomes a muscle memory if you've done it before. And if you don't have all that stimuli, I'm walking through a field. All right, great example. Stupid event. We're on patrol. We're patrolling through this farm field, and it's just uneven ground and really shitty, completely in the open, trying to roll our way back to the outpost. And then mortars hit. They started dropping 60 millimeter mortars on us, or 61s, or whatever the hell, whatever foreign mortar was. So we're all walking along, we're bopping along. We're like, hey, we're almost home. We're talking shit. We're all checking our spread and being a little bit complacent because this is before April 6th really kicked off. And then mortars start hitting. Boom, 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 boom. Right on top of us in the middle of the field. There's nowhere to hide. There's nowhere to, I can lay in a small irrigation ditch full of shit, which is what we did. But when the mortars started coming in, all of us, every single one of us, looked over to the mortar explosion and kind of thought, and I've asked him this, so that's what it looks like on the other side of the mortar. And then the next thought was, oh shit, I should get down. We all did the same thing. The very first time you're under a serious stimuli, gunfire, mortar fire, you name it, everybody shits the bed. Everybody goes, oh fuck. You do, that's what you do. Your very first time, all you do is go, oh shit. And it might be a half second or it might be a 5-second pause. Everybody's different. I did it. As soon as I started first getting fired at, I'm like, oh, fuck. And then you go, training. Where do I have to be? What do I have to do? And where are they shooting at me from? Or whatever. But that one moment of us walking and being absolute idiots and going, so that's what the mortar explosions look at on that end. We all realized, all right, we're all being idiots here. Let's get back on track. But everybody goes through it. Everybody has that operational pause of, oh shit. Sometimes a couple times. Sometimes they shit themselves. It fucking happens, man. Because you might die. It's not a it's not a thing that the human brain is commonly prepared to accept on the first time.
Yeah.
It kind of spins you a little bit.
Yeah, perspective immediately sets in, and then you have that adrenaline that's flowing through your body. Let's face it, you probably have got to do a lot of adrenaline therapy because that's all your body knows. I mean, adrenaline is a powerful drug.
Yes.
And
quite addictive.
And that's, where, so many veterans these days are out doing adrenaline therapy.
Yeah.
And it sounds like Call of Duty is your,
it's one of many. It's
your game of choice. This is something that I can, get lost in and kind of forget about my day-to-day life, kind of forget about any flashbacks that I may have, sights, smells, sounds, whatever it may be. That is your escape. And that is your time to not allow that little demon to come out and to want that attention, to want to be fed and nourished and all that other stuff. Because the more you feed it, the bigger it grows, and then before you know it, you have a combustible little friend in your, is sitting on your shoulder that's giving you a lot of really bad ideas. And that's where we are. That's why we are losing so many veterans in this country every single day, because we cannot keep those demons at bay.
Yeah. Why are veterans avoiding? Why are these guys? You're avoiding. If you're at a birthday party and a balloon pops, loud noise. Gotcha. That's what sets you off. Okay, go make some fucking loud noise. Go get around it. I used to go to the fire range all the time just to get used to gunfire without being on hyper alert.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do desensitization. No, desensitization. I can't talk. You got to desensitize yourself. Desensitization training, whatever the word is. You have to desensitize yourself to it. You have to get yourself used to it. And sometimes they're afraid to do that. You have to force yourself to do it. So I just wanted to mention that as a way to manage it, because it's really, really important. And I just,
a lot of Marines and other veterans out there, desensitized. They're still desensitized to this day. I mean, that's why dark humor is a thing. Dark military humor. It keeps veterans at bay. It helps keep that camaraderie alive, even after all these years of getting out of the service, because there's that common bond there, between that dark humor and having you live through it. And reminiscing can be very good. It can be very bad.
Yes. It can go both ways.
Sometimes you want to be sad and you want to be down and out, because that's just the human body. I don't want to be happy all the time. My body, I just want to listen to some old music. I want to listen to something that's going to make me sad. And I don't know what, I mean, I do that.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. Why would anybody want to say, I just feel like being sad today? I'm going to listen to some sad music or some music that brings me back to places. And I don't know why I do that, but I do it. And then there's some days where I'm like, man, today's the perfect day. I don't want it to end. And you're just rocking out and you're listening to some great music, even though you're still reminiscing. You're reminiscing about more positive things. Yep. And, you got that upbeat music, whatever genre that you want to do. It's feel good. You want to feel good. So some days you just want to feel somber and sad. And some days you just want to feel good and you're riding this high. It's almost like a very bipolar type sensation.
Yeah. I would agree. And and sometimes it's just, I find this about myself, is sometimes it's just about feeling. Like feeling
something. Yeah. Feeling something
hard sometimes. It doesn't come naturally to me because I compartmentalize everything. And so feeling, and that's why, and maybe that's why you do it. That's why it's what I find I do is, sometimes you're in a rock and roll mood. I want some Godsmack and whatever. Sometimes I just want like something that would horribly say like Carol Carpenter or something from the 1970s, because you have to spend time feeling that, because it balances out everything else. You don't know the good unless you can remember the bad, and you have to balance them out. And balance.
So I'm not crazy.
No, I do it too. Sometimes I'm in a bad mood. God damn it. I'm going to be in a bad mood for a little while, because I need to finish being in a bad mood.
Yeah. I'm not ready to make amends yet.
Exactly.
I'm not ready to, I want to be pissed and I want to stay pissed, or I want to stay sad, because that's just the way that my head is operating right now. And that's my way of, dealing with whatever I may be dealing with at that certain time, moment, day, month, whatever it may be, however long you are going through a storm, if you will. Sometimes the storm is short and, it's a pop-up storm. And sometimes, man, it sets in and, and you got a long one on your hands there that you got to deal with and get through. But man, look, I sincerely appreciate you coming on today, man. I think we've had a great conversation here, and I know a lot of the times, this is not a very easy thing to talk about. And I know you have a lot more other stuff out there that was on your plate, but you kept it really nice and again, there's so much value out there to be had from just the words and some of the stories that you shared today, that so many veterans can, pack in and sit down and maybe have that moment of solace and maybe have that moment of remembrance too, on one, their service to this country and their sacrifice and their dedication, and also remember the folks that we lost and the friends and their fellow service members and their brothers or sisters in arms, because I think that's very important too, that we shall never forget these brave men and women. And look, one final word from Keith Grimes, a 20-year combat hardened veteran that so many people, you may not realize it, but are looking up to you. You're in this book, and a lot of people look to you for advice and for encouragement. For, say, a Marine or a soldier, really anybody out there, even a civilian that may be going through some hard times right now, what sort of advice could you give these folks out there right now that are battling through their own demons?
Oh man, there's so many different things that are kind of my go-tos, or maybe I pass along. First and foremost, listen to your body. Your body is always trying to tell you something, and that involves your brain too. When we are talking about, hey, I'm not ready to finish being sad, I'm not ready to stop being mad, I'm gonna stay in this moment. That's okay. That's okay to do. That is an operational pause for your mind, your brain, your body. Take an operational pause. Stop and just fucking stop for a second. Most of the people I've come across or that I've dealt with when it comes to suicide, or they're having these issues, they don't know where to go. Don't spin. Just stop. If you can deal with it, you deal with it. If you can't deal with it, you may as well chew bubblegum. And I actually had this conversation with my 14-year-old daughter a few days ago. She was spinning on she plays club volleyball. She's 14 years old. And she was mad because some of her teammates, they're not into it as much. They're not dedicated to it as much. And they kind of don't care. And she is spinning and angry. I'm like, no. Why don't you chew some bubblegum? It's like, my daughter's very logical. Why would I do that? Because you're spinning on this and you may as well chew bubblegum. You're accomplishing nothing. Fix what you can fix. Let the cards fall where they may, but don't worry about what you can't fix. Stop and think. Do what you can. It's just like trauma. Trauma is actually kind of monotonous. It's very algorithmic. So if you're going through ABCs, you forget where you are. You go back to your ABCs. That's what people need to do. Stop, go back to what you can change, take the things you can't and just understand you can't, but do what you can. But don't get spun in the details. If you're spinning, stop and think. Or chew bubblegum and accomplish nothing too. Just remember the damn bubblegum.
It's incredible. Yeah, I just picked something up there. It doesn't matter if you're 14 years old playing competitive volleyball, because I know that's a big thing. And having somebody so dedicated to her craft, and then having father all these years before this feeling that same way on the battlefield. Mm-hmm. I've got a weak link, and I'm involved, and I am dedicated to this mission, and he's not. It's almost as if your daughter is living in your footsteps, battlefield to the volleyball court all these years later and a generation apart. That right there is...
Lessons are applicable.
Yeah, it is.
I mean...
Yeah, and that just goes to show people care.
Yeah.
People care. She cares. She practices.
Cares. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like my son too. He never puts the baseball bat down. He never has I think he sleeps with his glove. I mean, he is dedicated to his craft. He takes it serious. He is 100% vetted in this. Mm-hmm. And he wants nothing more than to go on and play college baseball. And then from there, who knows? But he works at it every single day. And when other people don't put in the type of work that he may put in, and they're on the same team, and when they need somebody to kind of step up and to do their job and to fill that role and to fill that gap, sometimes it doesn't get done. Yeah. Was it because they just had a bad at bat? It could be. Or maybe sometimes it's man, you know what? He didn't take as many reps as he should have this week, or, you know, maybe checked out the opposing pitcher that we were going to be facing, and he let the team down. Now, at this age right now in high school ball, probably not the case, but you do have some guys out there that are stragglers that made the team that are really good because they're just God-given athletes and they're just better than a lot of other people. But that doesn't mean that they're not doing their job and holding up their end of the deal when it comes for preparation.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. It's about being prepared, emotionally prepared, physically prepared, mentally prepared for the day. And if you're not, sometimes that day will be a bad day. And sometimes you'll get off lucky. But one day it's going to catch up with you. And when it does, how are you going to react? Fight or flight? And that's exactly what you live through every single day.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, you're going to eat the deck at some point. I'm 48 years old and I make dumb mistakes here and there. It happens. So you learn, you pick up, and you move on. And it's just, that's it. And it's hard.
Yeah, you can't sulk in it. But again, you
just move forward in some way, shape, or form. But and I just want to return back to this one thing. Don't play what if. If I played what if, I would have died a long time ago, because what if I treated this child different? What if I put my finger in that hole? I can thousands and thousands. Don't. Believe in yourself. Have faith in yourself. And that's the key people forget.
That's probably the number one thing I hear the most on this is survivor's guilt. And, you know, why me? Why am I the only one that survived this? Why, you know, when that mortar hit, why was I on the one side? You know, why was I the driver that day? I hadn't driven this Humvee in 6 months, and, you know, and everything happened on the passenger side and in the rear, you know, but yeah, I took some shrapnel and, you know, maybe even had an arm amputated, but I lived and everybody else didn't that day. And their survivor's guilt it just eats up people. And the what ifs. And you could talk the what ifs about any scenario in life. I mean, it could go to that volleyball court. It can go to the baseball field. It could be on the battlefield. And what happens happens, and what unfolds is in God's hands, and that's God's will.
So, it is what it is. You don't worry about it.
But that's the hardest thing in life.
It is indeed.
Was letting go of that, because if we could, there would be no such thing as a mental health crisis. If everybody didn't play the what if game, there wouldn't be a mental health crisis, because everybody's always, that's the anxiety piece. That's the depression piece. That's the piece that keeps you down. That's the stuff that keeps you up at night.
Oh yeah. No. And
you know,
truth be told, and I've never told anybody, any of my guys, any of this really is, I have a little bit of it, only because in the sense that, and I know better, but we have reunions every year. We have reunions with T4, and they kind of bounce around different. I was on duty for the 10-year reunion on Camp Pendleton. So for that one, I did make it. That's where the picture came from, funny enough. It's one of the few pictures I have of uniform that is presentable or pretty. But I don't go to a lot of the reunions. I mean, and I think this kind of ties in, because I have some guys that they have some angst over this, that I don't go to the reunions whatsoever. I went to the 10. I haven't been to another one since. It was Pendleton. But the main reason is because all the families are going to be there. And what am I going to say? I did the best I could. Well, I've had to talk to enough families of enough people who expired. I don't know how else to put it. I've had to talk to enough of the families that kind of done. Whatever information you have is what you have. But what I don't need is surviving or parents of some of our casualties. I just don't feel like being there when they want to ask the million questions that I can't answer. I can tell you an answer. I have an answer. You don't want that answer. You don't want, I can't go into details on certain things because it doesn't do anybody good and it doesn't, cost benefit. But this is something, these are things that I'm just going to go to the grave with. The last things they said. What were they doing the day before? What was happening and how did they get hurt and what did you do to fix it? Nah, I'm not going down that road. You have the information you need. I don't want to tempt you to do it. And I don't want to be really in that position anymore because I might get angry if you push harder. Oh, I want to know everything. Well, you don't want to fucking know because then I might tell you everything and I'll tell you fucking everything.
Yeah.
Now I'm a bad guy. So I don't go.
And a lot of these folks can't handle the truth.
No.
Because they already know what the truth is in their head. And if they hear the real truth, they're not going to be very happy about it, or they're going to be very sad. And that reunion is going to turn into a shit show. And it's supposed to be more of a happy, and remembrance type event. And then it ends up getting dark very, very quick. And that's kind of, it defeats the purpose of getting together, And
it does.
So,
enjoy their life, enjoy their stories, whatever. Do that. But then don't make it the pinnacle of your life. Don't make, like for me, don't make the Battle of Ramadi or my Navy, whatever. What are you doing now? And sometimes some of the guys that they go to the reunions, they're dedicated, they're committed to it, and I love them for it. But I can't live in the past like that. That was that chapter. I've had 5 more since. And you know what? I'm not done yet. What positive impact can I have on the world or on my environment or on my family? Or you know what? How can I be a better father or a better husband? You know what? Those are the key, whatever, high school football game. I don't want to talk about the high school football game. I want to know what you're doing now. And too many people, they live in the past and you have to move on. You have to move on.
And see, you go, you celebrate the good.
Yeah.
And, you remember and hopefully don't dwell in the past. And then also remember the fallen. That's why we're
absolutely
there, right. So, celebrate the good, remember the fallen, but you don't want to go backwards. But the problem is that you have a family and you have kids, and a lot of Marines don't. Their family is that reunion.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps them going, and that's what keeps them counting down the days until they get to see their brothers again and remember everything that they did together, because that is what they do, And again, I think a lot of that too leads back to that little demon, inside of all of us. And, sometimes it's events like that feed it, that continue to feed it. And I'm not saying it's a good thing. It's a bad thing.
No, it's
that's not my place to speak.
Yeah, I agree.
When we have a massive mental health crisis in this country, especially within the veteran community, I often think on okay, how can we get down to the nitty gritty here and actually treat it rather than just putting Band-Aids on it and throwing medication at it, and prescription drugs and, all this, it just kind of leads
all the things they throw at it,
substance abuse and, and then before you know it, you got a bad marriage, you're getting a DUI, you're getting arrested for fighting. And before you know it, you're not only mentally stable now, but now you've got issues with, finances and family and everything else that can get really bad really quick. And that's why, I'm a big supporter of Veterans Court and other things like that. But that's a completely different podcast. But man, look, Keith, I sincerely appreciate you coming on, man. It's been a good talk.
A great time, Brian.
And man, thank you so much for your service and your sacrifice and your dedication to this great nation, man. I mean, I know there's so many Marines out there that look up to you as their lifeline and know that you've done everything that you could do as a Fleet Marine Force hardened combat veteran that was dug in with 2nd Battalion 4th Marines in Ramadi. So with that, we thank you, and
I appreciate it.
just carry on, right?
Yeah, we're all just trying to survive this roller coaster, and we're all going to die. You do the best you can to kind of manage it, mitigate it, and delay it. I mean, that's what I'm doing. But
Every doc I know, they all say that the same exact way.
yeah, you just rip the cord and love it, and that's where that survival's guilt thing you talk about is, I vividly remember bullet impacts on my window or an RPG flying across my hood as I'm doing 40 miles an hour. I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be here because Marines took care of me or I made the right decision because I'm an absolute retard anyway. But you never know what you might be able to accomplish. But this can't be the greatest thing I accomplished. Damn it. You know what? Back 20 odd years ago, I did the best I could at that time, and they were all doing the same thing. Guys died, keeping me alive and keeping the rest of us alive. God damn it, I'm going to do something fucking great as often as I can to live up to that. And that includes not suck starting. You know what? They didn't sacrifice and fight and push and die just so that I can hang out, drink beer around a fucking fireplace and do absolutely nothing with my life. You know what? That to me is disrespect. Suck starting that 9mm, that's fucking disrespect to your people.
Right.
They died. Now go be fucking great.
They died to
do something positive every time.
They died to give you life. Now live it.
Yeah. Now I have to do something. I am obligated to do some kind of positive work or continue to do it. That's how I look at it. Is go be great.
After all of the bad that you saw, witnessed, and lived and went through on some very dark days in the Battle of Ramadi, would you do it all over again? Would you sign up to go be a naval corpsman and experience everything that you experienced, how hard it was and how difficult it was to get through it? Would you do it again?
You know what's funny is I've asked myself that question of, shit, man, did I make the right decision? And without a hesitation, you're goddamn right. I would do it exactly the same fucking way. I wouldn't change anything because I had a really good mentor who told me, if you're going to be a corpsman of Marines, you better know your craft and you better learn it if you go in the Navy and do it. So, goddamn it, know your craft. That's all you're fucking worth.
Hoorah.
So I learned everything I possibly could about medicine so that I can learn everything I could about being a Marine. And, this too shall pass. God damn it. Even when it's chaos and I'm looking at my buddy this too shall pass. When I'm having a great fucking time and I'm accomplishing all this shit and I forget where I heard this iteration of it. Even when things are great, they will not be great for long. Even when things are dark, they will not be dark for long. So don't fucking wallow in either one of them. Enjoy the ride and learn from each loop. And that's kind of the gist of it. And I wish I can remember the whole the guidance I was given.
What goes up must come down. That's just how it is, man.
Yep.
The mountain, we're always, trying to get up that mountain. And once we get up that mountain, sometimes we want to find a bigger mountain. And sometimes you fall back down to reality and you're stuck in that valley. But you got to get up and you got to start attacking that mountain again.
Yeah.
And, and just hope you stay on top of that sucker for as long as you possibly can. Because like I said, man, with each and every day comes a new chapter, comes a new goal, comes a new, experience. And it's how we deal with it and unpack the day-to-day, our day-to-day lives that will basically, deliver our legacy and kind of paint the pictures on who we are and who we were in this thing we all call life. So Keith, Semper Fi, brother.
Agree, brother. Semper Fi to you. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for putting up for my stories because I'll kind of talk because I don't know how. I'm not good.
No, you're great.
So thank you. I appreciate you and promoting this book. Fuck, man.
Yes,
every
sir.
book I've read has different variations and stories and whatever. Greg just gives it to you raw, man, and I love it. I absolutely love it.
Go out and get this book today.
Absolutely.
An absolute gem here by Greg Janney. I believe you can get this book anywhere sold online. The Magnificent Bastards in Ramadi, and a father's journey there, folks. It is packed full of knowledge, value, stories, remembrance.
Yeah, it's actually therapeutic, I find.
Legacies.
Yep.
And some of the bravest and heroic stories of our Marines and Naval Corpsmen like Keith Grimes. So again, go out and get this book today. It was done magnificently for the Magnificent Bastards of 2-4.
Good day, sir.
Hoorah.
This is the Today with Tally podcast.